Hello there, and welcome to this DataCorps application tutorial. I'm your host, Jordan Goldmeier, Senior Insight Manager here at DataKind. I run DataCorps. I'm in charge of all the projects and the scoping, and I ensure that we can deliver impact in those projects. Now, if you are watching this video right now, there's actually another video I would strongly recommend you watch first. That video is How Can Data Science Help? And that is done by Jake Porway, our founder and executive director here at DataKind. So let's get started. We're going to talk about the application and what kind of responses we like to see so that you're most successful when you fill out the application yourself. Now, there's really two main focus areas. That's the project information and the data, and we're going to go through both of those areas here in a sec. But I want to give you a tip because there's going to be a lot of text on the screen, and we're going to be going a little quickly. So don't worry, it is okay. I won't feel offended if you hit that pause button. So if I'm moving too fast, if you need to take a second to read, feel free to slow it down and hit pause. That's what it's there for. So let's get started with the project information section. So in this first question, we want you to describe the specific problem you'd like us to focus on. And we ask you, what are the pain points and challenges related to this problem that you hope this project will address? Now, what I would suggest to you is to hit pause and take a moment and look at this response. Okay, I'm assuming you've unpaused it now. So let's go take a look and see why I like this type of response. So in this first section, we set up what the organization does, and we also lay the groundwork for what they're trying to solve. So here we say our organization works to support and protect the rights of immigrants and refugees in our city. And like many nonprofits, we operate on a tight budget with limited staff. And that makes it difficult to respond to the wide variety of needs our community has. So already we've set up a truthful assessment of what challenges this organization faces. Next, we're going to go into the direct effect of those challenges. So what is that direct effect here? We are often caught off guard when a crisis comes up for one of our clients, and this can in turn affect our support to others. Next, we go from that effect and how we want to fix that effect. So in this case, it says we'd like help better understanding how people are using our services and how we might identify upfront which clients may need more robust support. So here we have an honest assessment of what the organization does and the challenges it faces. We then go into the direct effect of that, and then we go into how the organization would need help to solve that problem. So that's what we're really looking for in a solid description of the specific problem. Next, we ask, do you have any ideas in mind already of how DataKind might help address this challenge? And here we have a tip. We really like this we need so that framework. So you're probably wondering, what is the we need so that framework? Well, it goes like this. If we look at this description down below, we can see the first half says we need to predict food prices. So here we're saying we need to do this thing so that we can solve a specific problem. In this case, it's so that we can plan, allocate, and prepare to help those who hunger and to be ready for the next food crisis. Now, this is very interesting because I want to say in what I've discussed so far, we haven't mentioned data, we haven't necessarily mentioned technology. The point being is that we should frame these problems towards impact. So that what your organization faces, what you need, and why you need it. So let's take a look at a few more examples. Feel free to hit pause here to take a moment to take them down and think on them. Okay, so let's move forward. Now it's time to talk about the data. In our first data question, we say, describe what data you have available to support this project. Are you collecting data on your programs, people, processes, etc.? How was it collected? And what does that data represent? Okay, so we have a sample problem here. Go ahead and hit the pause button if you need. Just take a moment and read it. Okay, so I want to tell you what I really like about this response. What it tells us is what the data is being collected for. So we see data is being collected surrounding programmatic offerings and support groups within the New York City area. So already we've given, or I should say you've given DataKind a sense of what the data is, what you're collecting or what you're collecting, and where you're collecting it, which is actually something we often forget, but that's very important. Telling us that it's in New York City tells us something about the nature of that data. Next, we move into, this includes programmatic data surrounding who comes through our programs, when they join, where they're from, and how well they've hit their established benchmarks. And if we keep going, we see there's other data they collect around support groups. Now, there's a final section here that's actually also really important, and it really goes to that honest assessment that we were saying earlier, and that is that that currently there doesn't exist a link in the database between who has attended a session and who has received help through our programs. And if you follow that, you also see only recently have we begun deduping our records. So this is an honest assessment of what's going on in the data, and having that information for us up front really helps us create a project that helps you best, because there may be a way we can find a link, and there may be a way that we can dupe those records in the course of doing a data science project. So it's very important just to give us a lay of the land, where your data is, what you're collecting, and what things that you'd like to see or things that you know could be different. Next, we ask you if you're relying on open source data. If so, which sources? So in this case, the sample responses, we are relying on an open data set, the 2012 New York City Farmers Market list. And very important here, we say where it's from. So even if you're using census data, it's a good idea just to say, hey, this is the website I got it at. This is the organization I'm pulling it from if you're not getting it directly from the federal government. And also very, very, very important, please provide a link. That will allow us to look at the data and really understand the nature of it. Next, we really want you to think about how your data might have changed over the last few years. So here we say we realize that you're collecting data that might evolve over the years due to changing reporting requirements, regulations, and statutes. What we want you to do is describe what those changes are and if such changes would actually make it difficult to compare certain years. So we know, having worked with tons of nonprofits and civic organizations, that different regulatory and reporting requirements change the nature of the data being collected. So if you take a look at this response, we have a very specific response saying that before 2015, different field agencies were collecting their own data for their own assessment plans. At a certain point, 2016, new rules came down saying that all the assessment plans needed to be aligned. So because of that, there may be issues comparing data from 2016 and 2015 prior. Now, this actually highlights two specific points. First of all, it highlights to us the different years in collecting data. So from 2016, there's a fundamental change. But also lets us know that different organizations collected it differently, which is something we would also need to know. And those organizations may actually also have been in different regulatory environments if they were spread all over the country. So these are the types of things we would like to know up front so that we understand your data and how comparable it is to different years and what we can do to make it comparable. We also want you to highlight any concerns you have around sensitive and protected data. So here we have HIPAA, Privacy Act, and personal identifiable information, and it may not fall in these three. It actually could also be data that you just find sensitive. So let's take a look at this response, because I really like this response. It says our data includes social security numbers and home addresses. We're able to remove and anonymize the social security numbers before sending them your way. However, we believe the home addresses are an important part of this analysis. So we ask that you take all necessary precautions with this data, since it refers to a vulnerable population, and would prefer if you sign an NDA. So this is very important, because even though this isn't social security data, it is very sensitive and personal data. And we'd like to know if that type of data is what we're going to be working with. Now, if you don't have an NDA available, we have a standard NDA, and it's not a problem for us to sign one before moving forward. We take data sensitivity and concerns very, very seriously. Next, we want to understand the system that your data resides in. So we really want to get an idea of the infrastructure and the technology around it. So here we say, describe the system where your data resides, who owns it, if we can easily access the data, and anything we should know about it from a technology perspective. So here you can often get by with a short answer. I have a few sample ones here. The big things I want to point out here is that in the first response, we learn that it sits in a SQL server. So that's very important to us, because that means we can assign volunteers who have Microsoft SQL background. And the next one, we hear that our data sits in the cloud. Now, this may be a case where this is a big data problem, so that lets us know where the data sits. If it's in a distributed cloud, could find an expert who could work with that. Also very important to know if the data is run by a third-party vendor. Do they own the data? Do we need to talk to them first before getting it? These are the things we would love to know before starting a project. And also, even if you don't have a database, that's okay if it sits across multiple spreadsheets and you can send them over email. that's fine too. We've had many organizations that have done that. So if that's the case, let us know that as well. Now, I thank you for following along on these presentation tips with me. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, jordan@datakind.org. And again, I'm so happy and thrilled that you are considering applying for our next DataCorps slate, and I wish you the best of luck. Thanks.